Welcome to my presentation, Active Learning Strategies for Hybrid Online Lessons. Many teachers have had the experience of teaching hybrid lessons where some students are online and other students are in the classroom. It can be quite challenging to achieve optimal student outcomes in this situation. Student motivation and student participation are key to achieving learning outcomes and effectively teaching the course materials. So today I'm going to talk about various active learning strategies that can be used to improve student motivation and participation. First of all, let's talk about what active learning is. One definition: active learning is anything course-related that all students in a class session are called upon to do other than simply watching, listening, and taking notes. This definition talks about the students actively participating in activities rather than passively listening to a lecture or passively watching a video. The students are involved, they are participating. The next definition: active learning utilizes instructional activities involving students in doing things and thinking about what they are doing. This definition refers to metacognition. It refers to thinking about the reason for doing an activity. The value of an activity, the value of the process itself, the value of stated outcomes. Okay, now let's move on to factors affecting student motivation, one of the key principles in achieving favorable student outcomes. Here we have one of the leading models of motivation, self-determination theory by Ryan and Decky. Self-determination theory describes three types of motivation: amotivation, extrinsic motivation, and intrinsic motivation. It details 6 types of regulation, 6 types of behavior that regulates motivation. On the left, we have non-regulation. This is a state where an individual is apathetic towards a task. An individual is not behaving with intention, is not making choices, is not behaving with volition. The individual is simply going through the motions. Next, we have external regulation, where an individual's actions are being regulated by external factors such as the offer of reward or the threat of punishment. This type of regulation is entirely external. The individual is not appreciating the value of the task, is not appreciating the value of the process. The individual does not place importance on the preferred outcome of the task. Next, we have introjected regulation. With introjected regulation, the regulation of the individual's behavior is still somewhat external, but here we have ego engagement. The individual is acting in order to fulfill self-esteem, self-confidence, in order to achieve recognition or some kind of acknowledgement from other people, and also to avoid guilt and avoid shame. This form of regulation is still quite external. The individual has not aligned their own sense of values, their own goals, with the values or goals of the task. It is still somewhat external. Next, we have identified regulation. Identified regulation. with this form of regulation, well, this form of regulation is somewhat internal in the sense that the individual begins to align their own sense of values with the values of the task, the values of the stated goal, the values of the stated outcome of the task. The individual starts to place importance on the objective, on the preferred outcome of the task. So this form of regulation starts to become slightly more internal. Next, we have integrated regulation. With integrated regulation, the individual has aligned their own sense of values, their own goals with the values and goals of the task. The individual is very much in tune with the task at hand. The individual recognizes and fully acknowledges the values of the task, the process itself, not just the preferred outcomes. And lastly, there is intrinsic regulation. With intrinsic regulation, the process is internal. The individual is motivated by a sense of enjoyment of the task. The individual is curious about the task, enjoys the challenge. The individual enjoys the process of the task and also the outcome. Here, the motivation is entirely intrinsic, entirely internal, not requiring any external motivation or external regulation. At the bottom of this diagram, we can see basic psychological needs. Self-determination theory describes three basic psychological needs: relatedness, competence, and autonomy. Relatedness describes communication, interaction, emotional, verbal exchange between people. So relatedness is enhanced by, improved by mutual respect or receiving respect, an environment of caring, an inclusive environment, a sense of security and belonging. And relatedness is undermined by excessive competition, excessive criticism, cliques, traditions. Competence, the ability, the skill to successfully complete a task or successfully take part in a task. Competence is enhanced by an optimal challenge, a challenge that is set at the right level for the competence level, for the proficiency level of the individual or of the group. Competence is also enhanced by positive feedback. It's undermined by an excessive challenge, a challenge that is unachievable, and also by negative feedback. Autonomy, a sense of empowerment, is enhanced by the ability to make choices, the freedom and ability to make choices in a task, an adequate understanding of the process, an adequate understanding of the value of a process, the value of a goal, and an acknowledgement of the individual's point of view, and an acknowledgement of the individual's feelings. Autonomy is undermined by external rewards. Being promised an external reward externalizes regulation and undermines autonomy. Also threats of punishment are also external and undermine autonomy. Deadlines, likewise, imposed goals that do not align with the desired goals of the individual or of the group, and it is also undermined by excessive control or external control. These three basic psychological needs will be important to this presentation, that they'll be used to gauge the effectiveness or potential effectiveness of active learning tasks. I'll describe several active learning tasks and interpret them through the prism of self-determination theory and these three basic psychological needs. So let's move on to the first active learning task. This is called Think, Pair, Share. It's a very versatile, quite simple active learning task. The procedure is quite straightforward, quite intuitive. First, assign a task to be completed individually by the students. After the task has been completed individually, have the students form pairs and reconcile their answers, compare their answers with one another. After they've done that, call on the pairs. Call on the pairs to report back to the class. And when you do call on pairs to report back, don't do so in a predictable order. Do so in an unpredictable order, so that there's a sense of accountability among the students, a sense that they could be they could be asked to report their findings back. Also, it's important to set an appropriate time limit, not too long, because a time limit that is too long will cause the more proficient students to become bored, and the less proficient students might just lose concentration and switch off. So yeah, an appropriate time limit, short enough to complete the task, but not so short that it's unachievable. Think, Pair, Share activities work well with online platforms, online conferencing platforms like Zoom, the breakout room feature in Zoom can be used for forming pairs, and the teacher can monitor these breakout rooms quite easily and encourage students to participate fully. Also, screen sharing is quite useful for reporting back to the class. As we can see at the bottom of this slide, Think, Pair, Share, the Think, Pair, Share activity satisfies all three of the basic psychological needs of self-determination theory. We can see relatedness, competence, and autonomy. It enhances relatedness through pair work and effective communication, discussion, mutual appreciation. It enhances competence through an optimal challenge set at the right level, positive feedback, shared accomplishment, individual accomplishment. It enhances autonomy through an endorsement of competence, recognition of competence, an endorsement of the participant's point of view, recognition of their point of view, and also through an improved appreciation of the task value. Let's take a look at another active learning task. This is called Think Aloud Pair Problem Solving. This is another pair work activity where one student is the explainer and the other is the solver. The explainer explains the task and the solver produces an answer. So in this task, the pairs will be given a problem. The explainer will receive a handout with all of the relevant information or the necessary information to solve the problem. So it might be a short passage or a collection of information and a problem. The explainer's role is to explain all of the necessary information, to expand on anything that the solver might not fully understand, to give hints and clues so that the solver can work towards an answer. And the solver should ask for help and ask for extra explanation, ask for hints, ask for more information if needed. The explainer should not provide the answer. The explainer should not simply give up the answer. Instead, the solver should try to work through the problem verbally, work through their thought process verbally with the explainer, so that they can cooperate and the solver can arrive at the preferred answer. After the solver has done this, pairs report back to the class. This activity, Think Aloud, pair problem solving, has been shown to improve proficiency in test scores and whatnot. And as we can see at the bottom, it enhances all three basic psychological needs of relatedness, competence, and autonomy. In this activity, one of the key points of relatedness is the cooperative problem solving. This involves a lot of communication between the two students, within the pair. A lot of interpretation of the information provided, a lot of explanation, a lot of understanding the task, a lot of understanding the information that has been provisioned. And because the solver can't actually see the information, because the solver hasn't been given a copy of the information, the explainer has to provide enough explanation so that the solver can understand the information, understand the problem, and understand how to arrive at a reasonable answer. So this is a very good example of cooperative problem solving. Next, let's take a look at concept tests. Concept tests are multiple choice questions. This works quite well with Google Forms. Google Forms has functions for creating questionnaires and multiple choice questions, and it also allows you to display answers, display the group answers, display the class answers as a pie chart very easily. So it's all done very quickly. So it works well with Google Forms and Zoom, obviously, and Microsoft Teams and other platforms. So first, the teacher should give a set of multiple choice questions to the class to be completed individually. After the students have completed these multiple choice questions, after they've answered them individually, the student answers should be displayed as a pie chart or as a visual chart of some kind to the entire class. The teacher can discuss these answers or discuss the chart, and then after that, the students should form pairs and reconcile their answers. They should try to choose the best answers in pairs. After they've done that, they'll go through, answer the questions, reconcile their answers, and then display the reconciled answers as another pie chart to the class. Discuss these pie charts, discuss these answers, and then go through and discuss the corrections. This is essentially a three-step process, a three-step procedure for conducting multiple choice questions in your class. And it integrates quite well with online platforms. It allows online students and in-class students to participate together. It allows them to see the same information. It allows them to feel included. And as we can see, it enhances all three of the basic psychological needs of self-determination theory: relatedness, competence, and autonomy. It enhances relatedness through pair work, effective communication, mutual appreciation. It enhances competence through an optimal challenge, positive feedback, shared accomplishment, individual accomplishment. It enhances autonomy through an endorsement of competence, an endorsement of their point of view, improved appreciation of the task value, and the ability to make effective choices. Okay, let's move on to another task. Let's take a look at concept maps. Concept maps, otherwise known as mind maps. We've all seen these. Most students will be familiar with these. They usually include a central node, in which is written an idea, a principle, and then there are nodes connected to that central node which represent a relationship with that idea, a relationship with that concept, or a relationship with that process. And concept maps form a network of nodes interconnected to imply a relationship or a process. For concept maps, software such as Microsoft Word is very useful. A platform like Google Docs can also be used. Students will generally already have Microsoft Word installed on their computer, so this saves a lot of time. The students don't have to learn new software, they don't have to learn a new platform, they can simply go to software that they've used many times. It's best to demonstrate how to make a concept map in something like Microsoft Word to the whole class. It's best to demonstrate this to the whole class, using Zoom, using screen sharing. It's quite easy to draw shapes in Microsoft Word and to draw arrows and draw lines. All of these functions integrate quite well and work quite well in Microsoft Word. After the teacher has demonstrated how to make a basic concept map, the students should form groups and be given a topic, be given a theme that they'll use to make the concept map. These groups can be monitored quite easily through breakout rooms in Zoom, and the teacher should go through and monitor and make sure that the students are working through the activity effectively. One of the benefits of concept maps is that it allows students to benefit from each other's ideas and the dynamics of the group. Concept maps allow students to visualize relationships, to visualize a process, to visualize ideas. And this will result in a different outcome. It'll result in a different form of communication rather than other than simply using text, because the students will be able to see the relationship between ideas. They'll be able to see the relationship between different steps in a process using one of these concept maps. And of course, it integrates quite well with the online conferencing platforms. Concept maps help to enhance relatedness, competence, and autonomy. And it's a very good tool to use to demonstrate relationships or processes. Okay, let's move on to structured problem solving. Structured problem solving allows groups and individuals to break tasks into small steps. This is very good for complex tasks, difficult tasks, which may seem a little intimidating to students at first. Tasks which require multiple steps, tasks which require the processing of some quite complex ideas or multiple step processes. And it's useful for higher level cognitive tasks, more difficult cognitive tasks. I've included one example of a process that can be used during one of these structured problem solving tasks. So for example, a process which could be used: A, identify the problem; B, generate possible solutions; C, evaluate and test the various solutions; D, decide on a mutually acceptable solution; E, implement the plan, and F, evaluate the results. We can see that this is quite a complex task. And for a less proficient class, adequate explanation and demonstration would be needed. The teacher might want to demonstrate how to do this to the whole class, to show students how to go through these steps and walk the students through each of these different steps in the procedure until they feel comfortable doing it in their own groups. And of course, the task should be calibrated to match the proficiency level of the class. This is a particularly useful strategy, and it provisions for all of the three basic psychological needs: relatedness, competence, and autonomy. It enhances relatedness through group work. There's a lot of communication going on here, a lot of group dynamics going on. And of course, effective communication and cooperative problem solving. It's important that these groups be monitored by the teacher so that, well, to ensure that individuals are participating, that they are working together, that they are taking part in this, well, this quite complex group work activity. And this helps to enhance competence through an optimal challenge. It should be set at the right level. Positive feedback, shared accomplishment, mastery of complex tasks. This is an important one for this task, for this activity. As stated before, it allows students to break a complex task into individual steps. It enhances autonomy through the endorsement of competence, endorsement of point of view, an improved appreciation of the task value, and an ability to make effective choices. The ability to make effective choices is very empowering and improves, enhances autonomy. And this task specifically caters for that, as specifically well positioned to encourage students to make effective choices and consider various options. Okay, let's move on to case studies. Case studies are activities where scenarios are presented. So the scenarios are presented. They can either be real, they can either be factual or fictitious. And there should be a short case history, some background information, some background history, and a dilemma, a problem, a choice that needs to be made. One of the advantages of case studies is that it bridges the gap between theory and practice. Students can start putting into practice the ideas that they've learned in class. This can be a close simulation of something that they might be doing once they start working, something that they might do in the real world. So it's a very good task in that sense. This works well with online platforms and hybrid learning environments. The task can be demonstrated to students on platforms like Microsoft Teams or Zoom, and the students can work in groups using Zoom in the breakout rooms. So online students and students in class can cooperate together in these groups. It's important that a case study is tailored to suit the proficiency level of the class. As with all activities, of course, the difficulty level of the task needs to be appropriately calibrated. Yeah, with case studies, part of this is whether the teacher asks the students to choose an answer from various options or to construct their own answer. For students who are perhaps slightly lower proficiency, multiple choice options might be more appropriate. For students who have a higher skill level, constructing their own answer, leaving the activity open-ended may be preferred. And case studies allow students to collaborate, express their opinions, discuss alternatives, critique each other's ideas, and finally reach a consensus. As you might imagine, this task is particularly good for enhancing relatedness because of the group work nature and the intense communication, the large volume of communication required to reach an appropriate answer. And of course, cooperative problem solving and mutual appreciation. It also helps to enhance competence and autonomy. Okay, let's move on to three-step interviews. As the name implies, it's a three-step process. So first, students perform interviews in pairs, and they swap roles. The interviewer becomes the interviewee, and likewise. Next, the pairs report back to the class. So it's essentially a three-step interview process. This works quite well if the interview questions encourage interesting or entertaining answers. This helps to motivate the students and makes it more enjoyable. And also this helps with the reporting back phase of the activity if the answers are quite interesting. This works quite well on online platforms, Zoom and Microsoft Teams. The breakout room function can be used here, and a share screen function for reporting back. And once again, this activity enhances all three basic psychological needs of self-determination theory. Now let's move on to some common concerns about active learning. It's understandable that, well, perhaps practitioners who haven't used these before, or students who haven't encountered them before, would have concerns. So some concerns might be, or one concern might be, will active learning tasks slow the course down? Will it be difficult to get through all of the course material? Will all of the learning outcomes be achieved? Will this benefit my students? Will this slow the course down? And well, in reference to this, if the active learning tasks include a lot of course-related material, perhaps even material from the course learning materials themselves. So text, articles, information directly from the course materials. This may actually help the students to retain more information and will undoubtedly motivate the students to learn and motivate the students to participate. As the students become more internally regulated, as we remember from the self-determination theory diagram, as their motivation becomes more internally regulated, they will enjoy the process of engaging with the material. They will derive satisfaction from achieving a favorable outcome from these tasks. So it may in fact speed the course up or improve the student's understanding of the course material. Okay, the next concern, the next question: does it take a lot of time to prepare active learning tasks? It's a reasonable assumption that when a teacher first starts using active learning tasks in their classroom, it may take a bit of time to prepare those first tasks, becoming used to making them and learning how to use them in the most effective manner. But after you've used them a few times, it's relatively easy to make these tasks and to have them run effectively in your class and learn to regulate the tasks, learn to monitor the tasks, and achieve favorable outcomes. So there's no reason why it should take extra time to prepare these. The next question, do students enjoy the activities? Well, hopefully yes. Well, as we saw with the self-determination theory diagram, um, while the students are in an externally regulating mode, externally regulated form of motivation, perhaps in an amotivated state or an externally motivated state, they at first may not engage effectively with the active learning tasks. They may not at first internalize the value of the goals. They may not at first internalize the value of the procedure of the task. But as they become used to and understand how to perform the tasks, there are three basic psychological needs of relatedness, competence, and autonomy will be enhanced, and their enjoyment and satisfaction of the tasks will be enhanced. Okay, now the next question, what if students refuse to participate? This is particularly challenging in hybrid learning environments. Students on Zoom or on Microsoft Teams might simply turn off their microphone. They might simply turn off their camera and simply not participate. For students who haven't taken part in active learning tasks before, may have this reaction. But for reasons that I've just explained, once students begin to participate in these activities, once they start to appreciate the value of the procedure of the task, once they start to internalize the value and stated outcomes of the task, they will derive enjoyment from it and actively participate. It also helps to explain some of the literature behind this, to explain some of the demonstrated advantages of active learning. That there is literature and data that you can use to demonstrate that there's proof that active learning does improve student outcomes. And there's an explanation of this to the class would encourage that initial participation. Okay, that's it for my presentation today. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Thank you for your attention. If you have any comments or if you have any experiences with active learning yourself, or any questions or comments, then I look forward to hearing from you. So thank you very much.